Hi, everyone. I know we had a little break. I know this is a problem. If I come home, you have to shop. I gave you a bone. So today, we had a hiatus of 3 weeks, and I have 2 or 3 classes left of this. And we're going to start with La'asok b'divrei Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So interesting. I just came from meeting with a bat mitzvah student, and I ask each one, well, what do you want to study next? Because you're done with your tutors and with Avi and with me. What's next? And they look at me as if I am from outer space. What do you mean I have to keep studying? What, huh? So, yeah. So hopefully we will get our kids to keep studying as well. First of all, do you have a good Pesach? Who had a good Pesach? Anyone want to say about it that was good? Yeah.
Yeah. Ted and I had COVID, so none of our family came, but we recovered, so that was good.
Right. Anyone else? Interesting, good. Okay, we might have a little problem with the dog because the dog next door is outside barking at her. I know you can't go out to see Asher. All right. So, but I wish Asher would stop barking. On the 22nd is what Americans call Earth Day. I don't really know the history of how it got to be called Earth Day. Maybe Sam does or someone else here does. Anyone know how Earth Day came about? Seems like it's probably relatively, someone could Wikipedia that for us, but.
Yes, I can tell you when it came about.
Okay, thank you.
The Whole Earth catalog in the late 60s, for those of us old timers, led to the creation of, or the making of Earth Day.
Okay, thank you. So the thing is,
Google it, yeah.
Judaism thinks every day is Earth Day. And then it's one of those central mitzvot that we often don't talk about, although Eleni actually has done a lot of art about one of the texts that we have tonight, because we have a Honi HaMe'agal text. So we're going to start on page 43. Next week, we're going to do love as a mitzvah, and then hopefully one more class. The environment as religious wonder. Hold on, let me see if I can get this dog to not talk anymore. Honey, here's some treats. Okay, I come armed. I have all kinds of treats for her, so she'll let us study.
Can you put the link in the chat because it wasn't in the email?
I'm sorry about that.
Sure, I'll put it in again. It's the same set of information we had before.
I know, but you have to find it.
Oh, fine.
Okay. Okay. I would love for someone to read this. There's a lot of text here to read Martin Buber, his famous important work, I and Thou, which reminds us that we live in relationship in the world to everything else. And we can either have that relationship be I and you, or I, it. We don't want to objectify even any parts of nature. So let's read from I and Thou. Who would like to be our reader? Thanks, Jane.
I can contemplate a tree I can accept it as a picture, a rigid pillar in a flood of light, or splashes of green traversed by the gentleness of the blue silver ground. I can feel it as movement, the flowing veins around the sturdy, striving core, the sucking of the roots, the breathing of the leaves, the infinite commerce with earth and air, and the growing itself in its darkness. I can assign it to a species and observe it as an instance with an eye to its construction and its way of life. I can overcome its uniqueness and form so rigorously that I recognize it only as an expression of the law, those laws according to which a constant opposition of forces is continually adjusted, or those laws according to which the elements mix and separate. I can dissolve it into a number, into a pure relation between numbers, and eternalize it. Throughout all of this, the tree remains my object and has its place in its time span, its kind and condition. But it can also happen if will and grace are joined, that as I contemplate the tree, I am drawn into a relation and the tree ceases to be an it. The power of exclusiveness has seized me. What I encounter is neither the soul of a tree, not a dryad, but the tree itself.
Has anyone read parts of I and Thou before? Yeah, so you get his basic arguments, and it's sort of easy to understand with another human being that you're having relationship with. It is a little harder with things in the natural world, maybe, but let's see, because we're going to ask the question in relationship to what Heschel thinks. You want to keep going, God in search of man? But actually, before that, does anyone have anything they want to say that is compelling about this text?
Just that it's beautiful.
I was listening to a podcast this week about indigenous peoples in California, and how a mining company went in and ended up cutting down trees that were 500 years old and had religious significance for the original people, the native people who lived there. But the mining company, just was going to get to its mines. And the person who lives, a Native American, talked about what they wanted in reparations was for the company to start to understand what had happened to the relationship that they had with these trees, and how you don't just cut down trees that are sacred. And it reminded me of this I, thou text, that we both see trees as just objects, as, where we get wood from. And
Not all of us.
well, right. And exactly. And then there are those who are able to see the trees as not inanimate objects at all, but animated objects, objects that live and breathe and can have relationship with us, which is one of the things we're certainly talking about. I think that we can both, I think that often we live in both places. We can see, we can have a relationship with nature, and we also then use or abuse nature. We do both. I know not everyone, but okay, so let's go to Heschel. Yeah, can you keep going, and then we'll get you next time, Rini. Among the many
One of
things.
the many things that religious tradition holds in store for us is a legacy of wonder. The surest way to suppress our ability to understand the meaning of God and the importance of worship is to take things for granted. Indifference to the sublime wonder of living is the root of sin. The beginning of our happiness lies in the understanding that life without wonder is not worth living. What we lack is not a will to believe, but a will to wonder.
Okay, so they're both coming at nature in different ways, but in ways that really help us to think about where we live within this natural world. The question is, Buber describes an approach to nature that he recalls relationship in very similar ways to the relationship that Gila and Myra could have, like a real relationship that goes back and forth. Have any of you had that kind of relationship with a tree or the natural world? How has it that your understanding of the natural world gone from I, it to I, thou? And what made it that happen? I'm not sure I have. I'm not sure. So that's why I'm asking all of you who are wiser and know the environment better. Eleni, who's taken a walk in nature?
Yeah, I hope if my moving around bothers you, I'll turn off.
We hear you.
Oh, I think that this is a really amazing question that you're asking us. And I've been thinking a lot about it lately. And to be really concise about it, I feel as a Jew, I have a very complicated relationship with nature, especially thinking about it today, Yom HaShoah. As a people, we've been exiled. We've been thrown out of pretty much every land we've ever lived in. God willing, we won't be thrown out of this one. And, Yom HaShoah, it just hit me very deeply this year. So I've made it part of my practice to learn as much as I can, of my religious practice, to learn as much as I can about the actual land I live on here in Princeton.
Well, we're losing you. We like your idea, but we're
So
losing
I'm
you.
still trying to learn how to identify this. How about now?
We can hear you now. Can you stand still just for a moment while you give us your thought and then keep walking?
Yep.
So we don't lose
I
you.
think I pretty much said it. I said did you hear where I said I'm trying to learn more about
trying to learn
the
more about
physical place?
the physical place because as the wandering Jews or the Jews who've been made to wander, we don't have as much connection to the natural world, maybe.
It hasn't come to us naturally. We've had to fight for it.
It's beautiful.
Anyway, I'll stop there and let
That's
others
beautiful.
talk.
Bob,
I read the I, it differently than others have, and I probably differently than most people have. I read it as respecting the itness of what you're with. So, for example, if you're sitting at a table and you're writing using the table to write, well, you're respecting a function of the table. If this is a wooden table and things get so terrible, you have to break it up and burn the wood to keep warm. Well, at least you're respecting the woodness. But if I take a leg off and start whacking people in the head, then I'm not respecting it's like treating the other as an other with respect for the other. To walk off onto that another expression that we've picked up in our descriptions of other. It's not completely blending it to me. It's what is the it character of the it.
I mean, Buber's understanding of the it was definitely, I see that you're seeing it different than he does, but his conception of the it was negative. It was when you're not in relationship with something. So I see that you're defining the I, thou, or I, it relationship differently than he is, which is
Right.
okay. But his understanding was that there was something negative in the world about all the I, it's, about me in relation to something that I didn't respect. And that for him was the it. And the thou is what I do respect. So you can totally understand it differently. than he does, but that's his sort of like, that was what he brought into the world of it versus I thou. Anyone else have a thought about your own changing relationship with the natural world? So Michelle and then Myra.
Yeah. So once I was in Glacier National Park by myself for a couple of days. Mostly I was traveling with other people.
Wow.
And, at that time, I don't think you didn't necessarily know what you were going to see at the end of a hike. So I just kind of chose this place and I hiked. And when I got there, it was a glacial cirque that was just like incredibly stunningly beautiful. And there was, a lake in front of it. And I don't know. And I just felt like I was sort of part of the whole, just the place and the beauty. And I think that kind of overwhelming feeling of being like totally connected to the created world is something that, that did for me that day, but that nature really does for me often, especially when it's amazing.
It's interesting the way you describe that, because it feels very much like what Heschel's talking about. Heschel's focus on being in the natural world can help us to focus on the wonder in the world and the wonder in our lives.
Yep.
Which is, I think that's Heschel's point. I feel like what Buber's asking us to do is harder. I'm not sure I've ever been able to do what Buber's asked, right? Throughout all of this, the tree remains my object, has its place, its time span, but it can also happen if will and grace are joined, that as I contemplate the tree, I'm drawn into a relation and the tree ceases to be it. I don't know that I've had that yet in the natural world. I'm not sure. I think I can get to the Heschel place. I don't know. Anyone else feel like
Yeah.
they're getting
What I was going to share was very similar to Michelle's, because I had a similar experience in the Grand Canyon when I was on a hike with a group and went under a waterfall. And when I came out, I felt totally in this very special place, actually as part of nature and connected to nature. And this was quite a while ago, but I never forgot it. And it was a feeling of unity. And the other times I really enjoy being in nature is, when I'm in the ocean swimming and I really feel the water and the waves. It's not quite like the waterfall, but it's close. However, it's not what Buber is describing as, a one-on-one relationship. But trees have always been really important to me. And I've always tried to find a place to live that has trees around my house, which I do now, I've done before. And it's like an essential that I look for wherever I move.
Rini and then Eleni, but then I want to go back to something Eleni said and bring in an Israel thing that occurs. Rini?
I have a different take on it because I don't have a specific event that binds me to nature. I'm really wowed by nature, or whatever the word is, every day, because our azaleas just bloomed. And to me, that's like a miracle. And the irises are coming up. And so the other day we had deer eating our willow tree. And so I just love all of it. So there's not one thing. I mean, when my son lives in Denver now, so we see the Rocky Mountains all the time from shopping centers, wherever you are. And they're very beautiful, but they don't, and I like looking at them, but they don't mean any more to me than my tree budding or my azaleas or whatever is blooming.
Interesting. Eleni, before you jump in, I wanted to respond to something you said that makes me very much think about this idea. Thank you. Think about this idea of, being not so rooted to the land, in that most of, and it's obviously not everyone, there's so many environmentalists that are Jews, but the archetype of Jew wasn't outdoor enthusiast, that it was book before the 20th century. It was pasty white Ashkenazi sitting in a room learning. And I feel like what changed that was were the chalutzim, were the people who went and actually turned the desert, even if we shouldn't have been draining swamps, the people who went and drained the swamps and literally built the Galil and built the desert. And I feel like Israelis that I know, maybe not, I don't say Haredim, I would say Israelis who are Dati Leumi, who are like national religious, down to secular or up to secular. They have a maybe different way of relating to the land that the education system and the state of Israel has given them. Like, I don't know what Haganat Teva is here in the United States. Everyone know what is Haganat Teva in Israel? It's the Society for the Protection of Nature.
We have environmental commissions in every town, and
right, but it's not as everywhere as it is in Israel. In Israel, the beaches are run by the Haganat Teva.
Well, we have the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, and many others. But
absolutely. I just think the way that most Israelis live is much more connected to the land. There's this idea that Israelis grow up with, and Gila, you can tell me I'm wrong, but da artzecha, right? Go and know your land. There's this big, a ton of Israelis that I know right now, are endeavoring to do Shvil Yisrael, which is, to hike the entire country. And it doesn't, and this is from like kids after the army to people I know in their mid and late 80s are doing Shvil Yisrael, the hiking the whole country. Anyway, it just made me think about how that changed. You're making the change by getting out into nature and learning where you are. And I think as a Jewish society, the state of Israel, as it has raised the last few generations, has raised it with a much, like a sense of connectedness to land. There's songs about it. Anyway, your point, go ahead.
Well, that's a great segue. I'll stop so that I'm not making everyone dizzy. As I look at the trees, I'm enjoying thinking about this, because I think for me, there's a difference between nature in general. Like I traveled and see an amazing place like the Grand Canyon, which I actually haven't ever seen, but hope to. Yeah. And then really learning the nature in my hometown, in my backyard, which is closer to what I'm hearing you say, Rabbi Mero, about Israel and how people are encouraged to know their land and where they are. And, coming out of the yeshivas with white, pale skin and becoming the strong, Santen Chalutzim. So I think it's really interesting to reflect on different feelings we might have for the azalea bush in our backyard, with which we could have an I-thou relationship. I sort of heard Rini say something a little bit to that effect, which is different from the amazing and awesome experience that one can't help but have, with some amazing natural phenomena. So that's just something to weave into this great discussion.
Okay, I'm going to keep going. So we're going to go to something totally different. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the next one, because if we did, I would rather have Eleni show us her art. But here's the story of Honi HaMe'agal. I'll read it. Once Honi was walking along the road and he saw a person planting a carob tree. Honi asked, "How long before it will bear fruit?" The man answered, Shivim Shana, 70 years. Are you sure you will be here in 70 years to eat from the fruit? The man replied, I found the world filled with carob trees. Just as my ancestors planted for me, so I will plant for my children. What do you take from the story? What's the mitzvah here?
Planting the tree.
Planting.
Okay, what's the uber mitzvah? What's the meta mitzvah? Yeah, Rini or Jane.
I think it's planning for the future to maintain what we have in plan for the future. And I'm sorry about that noise. I thought Ted would pick up. When we were in Yosemite one year, we took a tour with an Indian, a Native American guide. And she said,
By the way, I just love how the Canadians call it. You know, the Canadians.
yes, Native people.
No, First Peoples.
Oh, First Peoples. Okay. So we took a guide with
Everything
a
is muted. I
woman.
can't hear anything.
You can't hear me? I'm not muted. No.
No, she's not muted. We hear her. Sorry.
So this woman took us on a tour and she was talking about acorns as an example. And she said when the first people gather acorns, they know how to process them so they don't get poisoned. I mean, because we really can't eat acorns. But they always left a quarter for the animals,
Yeah.
a quarter to replant, and they ate a quarter or something like that. Anyway, they were always planning so that there would always be enough for the present and the future. And so I think that's what this is, and that's our big issue with climate change. We're not planning for the future. We're just using everything up now. So I think that's what he's getting at.
Yeah. I mean, one of the questions here is what are other examples of mitzvot that connect the present to the future? And I'm looking at a couple of our teachers here. I'm looking at Ellen and Gila, who spend their time planting in young minds and helping them to learn Hebrew. And I sometimes have this like, what's the opposite of a dream? Like a horror, a nightmare. I'm like, I look around shul and it's not a bar bat mitzvah week. If it's a bar bat mitzvah week, like there's a lot of kids there and kids are learning, and I look around, I'm like, oh my God, who's going to chant the Haftarah in 20 years? Who's going to chant the Torah in 20 years?
I will,
Okay. Okay.
from,
On
We'll come
Stream.
up with our walkers.
On Stream. Yeah. No, but I do think that like, this idea of planting and that next generation. Yeah, I need trees on the outside world. And also, if I want there to be a service on a Shabbos morning, I need some of the people that are getting up to not even to daven, to read Torah and Haftarah to be our younger people. And so it's not that I think it's bad that older people do it. I'm one of those older people at this point. I just, need to make sure there's some seedlings out there so that there's someone to chant the Haftarah when I'm watching via Zoom when I'm old and can't come, can't come in. Tov, we're going to text C, translating how we care about the world and nature into the mitzvah of caring about the nature. Kilo, I believe there are so many people, especially in this community, who understand that we have to deal with the environment. I think that everyone on this call does. And I mean, probably a lot of you drive electric cars or semi-electric cars, and a lot of you are bikers, and a lot of you are people who try not to waste resources. And I think that is very much a part of this community. I'm not sure if we see it qua mitzvah. So the following texts are about seeing our obligation to caring for the environment really as one of the most beginning essential mitzvot of the Torah, commandments of the Torah and Jewish practices. So Gila or someone else who reads Hebrew, can you read for us text C?
I can read.
Tov.
ויקח אדוני אלוהים את האדם וינחהו בגן עדן לעובדה ולשומרה.
So give us the translation, and why is there a dot in that hay?
The dot in the hay is because it's to emphasize and missing the word ota.
Yeah,
Like to emphasize.
we really want it emphasized. The Lord took Adam from the word. What is Adam? What the et ha-Adam, the Adam. What is Adam? What word is Adam connected to, folks?
Earth, right?
Adama, earth. Yes, Adam is
Just the
just,
earthling.
yeah, the earthling or the thing from the earth. Even the very name is connected to the earth, and placed him in the Gan Eden. Why? Not to like have a free ride. That's what we all think. I think of Gan Eden as the place of the free ride. Everything's free and it's all beautiful fruit and trees and everything. No. L'ovdah u'l'shomra. That the very first thing that Adam is doing is being put in this on this earth to guard and work the land. What if you are Adam or Adama? What if your name is Adam, or you are the Adam, the human, and your job, my job is to be in the Garden of Eden and to work it and guard it. I mean, I would say that the very beginning of Bereshit, Genesis, that is our job. This is one of the earliest mitzvot that each one of us is in some sort of Gan Eden. Look, I think I'm in a Gan Eden. I have that beautiful lake and there's the ocean less than an hour away or an hour away. It's gorgeous. But I'm here as an Adam, gender neutral, to work and guard it. That's the first mitzvah here. We generally think of the first mitzvah coming much later in the Torah, but this is it. Okay, Gila, Odivrit. And this time you're gonna have to read without vowels.
אוי אוי אוי.
Yeah.
ראה את מעשה האלוהים, כי מי יוכל לתקן את אשר עיוותו, בשעה שברא הקדוש ברוך הוא את האדם הראשון, נטלו והחזירו על כל אילני גן עדן, ואמר לו, ראה מעשיי, כמה נעים ומשובחין הן, בכל מה שבראתי בשבילך בראתי. תן דעתך שלא תקלקל ותחריב את עולמי, שאם קלקלת, אין מי שיתקן אחריך.
Beautiful midrash. So midrash, it's a late text, but this midrash just, I love it. Okay, who could read the midrash in English? Read it with some passion.
I'll do it.
Yeah, great.
Upon creating the first human beings, God guided them around the Garden of Eden, saying, "Look at my creations. See how beautiful and perfect they are. I created everything for you. Make sure you don't ruin it or destroy my world. If you do, there will be no one to fix it."
Yeah, and I wish we could hear, like, the Hebrew of it is just so beautiful.
Why is that Midrash Kohelet? What's the Kohelet has to do with that?
So just that's the point of midrash. It takes stories that we don't necessarily know, right? And it puts the stories in. It doesn't have to do with Kohelet.
No.
It, you know. So make sure you don't ruin or destroy my world. You see that it's in the my world. We're probably at the time in history, 1,500 years or more after this was written, when we are ruining it. Okay, now we go to another midrash. Gila, you're up again.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
בנן אמרה, אף על פי דברים שאתה רואה אותן שהן יתרה בעולם, כגון זבובים ופרעושין ויתושין, אף הן בכלל בריאתו של עולם הן. ובכל הקדוש ברוך הוא עושה שליחותו, אף על ידי נחש, על ידי יתוש, על ידי צפרדע.
Everything, even your appendix, this would say, has a purpose. Every yatush, every mosquito. I think that, what I was mentioning earlier, how the early chalutim drained the swamps, and what we learned is we kind of needed those swamps. So now they're giving them water back, but yeah, all of creation is important. So again, more in all three of these texts, the very first obligation for us is to take care of the earth. Did you grow up thinking that? Not did your children grow up thinking that, but did you grow up thinking that it was a mitzvah to take care of the environment?
I'm laughing because I grew up in Manhattan, so we didn't have trees. We had buildings and cars. So I grew up to not waste things, but not necessarily concerning nature.
Mm-hmm. Bob, yeah, Bob.
Oh, well, the answer is no. I grew up in 16th Street on Philadelphia, and we didn't have the slightest idea what we were doing, and we filled trash can after trash can and all that. And it's a very modern thing. I wanted to comment on the draining of the swamps. There are many people in this Zoom who remember Moshe Budmore, who you did not have the privilege of knowing. But he was a wonderful German-born Israeli whose family emigrated in 1930, and everyone thought the family was crazy, to the German-speaking, I'd forgotten the name of the kibbutz, but it was on the Hula. And he lived there, was part of the whole process of what went on, had malaria from the swamp, and remembers the draining. And he showed beautiful pictures of the swamp. And then, of course, we've told the story of the consequences, and they've actually put back, I'm not sure how much is restored, but they restored some part of it for the sake of not just beauty, but the sake of the ecology. And it's really a lesson which we are doing a terrible job of learning. We're not learning.
Well, right. We're not learning, we're trying to learn. Eleni's taking her walk, as many of you are people who are out in the world and trying to recycle and trying to use less. And in this course on mitzvah, the question is, how do we get to a point in Jewish education where the kids understand they're taking care of the earth as such an important and critical and elemental mitzvah from the beginning of the Torah?
They know everything you said just now, except the word mitzvah.
Yeah.
Understand everything you said, and they do it, and they know it better than us, but they don't understand the word mitzvah, and they don't connect it to the mitzvah.
They don't connect it. Right. And that is what me, Gila, Ellen, that's what we need to do. That's what, when we're teaching our B'nai Mitzvah kids, we need to, and they're reading this stuff in Genesis, or they're in Hebrew school, or they do projects, or when they see the garden, the incredible, beautiful garden that the Jewish Center has and has been cultivating for so many years. And I got to use grain from, on my Seder plate, there was grain from the TJC garden, where if you see what's going on, do you all see the tarp that's in the front? You know what we're doing with it?
Yeah.
So someone want to tell everyone else what we're doing with it?
What are you doing with it?
Well, I mean, I'm not part, I'm just watching it happen. They're killing the grass so that they can then have a raining catchment area. Because the environmentalists in the shul, of which I am not one, the scientist people, have come to say that more helpful to the environment in that particular place isn't planting grass, but is having a raining catchment area. And
The
then
rain
using
garden,
water.
the rain garden.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay, we're gonna go to sort of texts that are a little bit philosophical, if that's okay with y'all's. So Jeremy Benstein, American Israeli, went to Harvard, environmentalist. He has his, I don't know what his PhD is in. His master's degree is from Schechter, which is the Schechter Institute of Jewish Studies in Israel. He wrote a fascinating book on Hebrew language and trees, called On Hebrew Roots and Jewish Roots. So it's a great book. I encourage you. But he writes a lot about Judaism and the environment. So who would like to read for us? Anyone? Najada, you wanting to do it?
Yeah, I can read. It's text 7, right?
Yeah. Avodah.
Avodah is work or labor, and in the context of land, cultivation, and shemirah is guarding or protecting. If we try to divine the meaning of these terms from their reference in other contexts, our relationship to the garden, and by implication, the world, is homologous to our relationship with God. We are enjoined to do to the garden what we do for God, avodah, service, and also what God does for or to us, as in the priestly blessing of Numbers 6:24, Yevarechecha veishmerecha. May God bless you and watch over you. The mission is to work, to produce, to develop, but at the same time to preserve, to guard, to be vigilant that the work doesn't get out of hand. It must remain, in a word, sustainable. Indeed, perhaps the best translation of the biblical phrase le'ovda ou le'shomra is sustainable development.
And that is the phrase that Gila read earlier, to work it and to watch it. It's interesting that he would translate it as sustainable development in a modern context. I love the translation. It's interesting. Go ahead, working the land.
Working the land is crucial for human flourishing, but guarding the earth is a critical complement. We need to guard the world precisely from our avodah, the effects of our work. In our struggle for the earth's fruits, we sow the seeds of our own and the world's destruction unless we temper our toil with responsibility and concern for posterity. We cannot totally manage the earth, nor should we strive to, but our impact on it is so great that we have to take responsibility for shaping policy for our actions, which determine a great deal of the course of this planet. Stewardship, then, is more of a stance, an attitude about service and discipline than a scientific vision of a type of control.
So Anyone want to react before we go to some questions? Anyone here own a big biotech company or any kind of big, like, it almost seems like we all get this, but also we're not the ones that have to make decisions about how farming is done in this country or about how commerce is done, or so what are ways that we can do this kind of work? Sustainable development. Yeah. Eleni.
So one of the ways that, well, I think each person will find their own entry point. So I
Yeah.
can speak to the approach I'm taking lately.
Yeah.
Here in West Windsor, there are plans to build 8 warehouses,
Yep.
Quaker Bridge Road and Clarksville Road, which very briefly is basically not good for the environment. And so many are working through the Environmental Commission and the township councils as citizen scientists, you know, to revisit the wisdom of these plans.
Yeah.
So I think many of us, can be overwhelmed by the projection that time is running out. And so my challenge is to make an entry where at least I can do something positive and could impact in
Right,
a positive way.
right here, Bashatach, in your town, you can do that positive. I know about this because I follow all of Tirza Warman's posts about it, right? Or do you follow her on social media? So whenever there's a hearing, she posts about, this is what you as residents of the community can do to not have these warehouses. And then the bigger question is, well, then where do they go?
They're going to be empty actually because they're not needed, but that's an important question.
Right.
But it doesn't mean they need to be near schools where kids are crossing the street all the time.
Okay, but also then maybe, as you're saying, maybe they don't need to be anywhere.
Exactly.
Or maybe there's
I mean,
a way,
those are the questions. Those are the challenges. But
maybe there's a way to
more,
construct them to lose less land.
yeah, there's a lot of pieces attached to it about roads and trucks and timing and all of that. But that's one entry point for someone who's interested in being involved locally.
Yep. Anyone have others? It's a beautiful one on, you and others in our community are involved in that way. Yeah, Rini.
Our mayor is very big on the environment, and where I live in East Windsor. And she has gotten lots of grants from the state for land preservation and park preservation. And we have a farm a few blocks from us, and he has committed they paid him for it, of course, but he's committed to never sell his land for development. It will always be open. And so that's just the opposite of what's happening in West Windsor. Even though there are warehouses in East Windsor, she's very committed to preserving as much land as possible, open space.
There's also, not here. I keep thinking about, I've mentioned this place many times. Have any of you been to Kibbutz Keturah? So it's the first kibbutz that I spent a significant amount of time on, and it's where I have, I guess, my adopted family, and I try to go every time I'm in Israel. It's a schlep. Even if you're in Israel, it's a schlep. I say it's like get on the Arava road and start driving and then keep driving for a long time. But what it does have is, the incredible Arava Institute. And out of that Arava Institute for environmental studies was born the incredible solar work that is going on, where the whole south of Israel in just a few years will be run only on the sun. That was a lot of people taking risks and backing the research and throwing money into it, but now they are close, and they are exporting their technology to Africa as well and other places. Interesting. Anyone have anything else they want to add? Okay, very quickly on I'm going to where it says D. I know we're cruising through these texts so that we get to see some of them. These are texts about, yeah, Michelle.
I'm just thinking about, you were asking about how to get kids to connect mitzvah with,
Yep.
And it seems to me like you have to have initiatives outside of a classroom environment where you have kids doing something that in their town is, like I think about the Butler Tract here that and how the university is kind of eats up land and covers it with buildings, and and there was a proposal that they basically create some affordable housing in the Butler Tract, which would keep it kind of largely green. I think that you need projects for kids. You don't need to just talk about mitzvah in a classroom. I think that's not.
Of course. Yeah, they have to learning by doing. Absolutely. And hopefully some of the projects.
Which means we all have to be doing,
Yeah, so hopefully the new projects at the Jewish Center will help them do that. I think they learn a little bit. A lot of them get some time in the garden, but hopefully they'll get time in the rain garden and also in the trail.
But I don't think that's sort of little bitty. I think it has to be something really out in the community, not just something that you're doing on the grounds of the Jewish Center.
Except maybe what we're doing on the grounds of the Jewish Center could be big.
Maybe.
See what happens with the rain. Okay, I just have a very little bit amount of time, so I want to go to the page 46 and leave the Torah stuff away. Bal tashchit, the mitzvah is to not waste and not destroy. And so I want to see what Benstein does with it. And we're not going to go into the Tsar Balei Chaim stuff. This will be the last text. Text 10. Would somebody like to read it?
I'll read it.
Okay, thank you. Although I just wait, let me just read you the Rambam, because I think it's hilarious, because Rambam often tells people to beat each other, right? If a recalcitrant husband won't give his wife a get, you know what Rambam's solution is? Kofinoto. Force him, beat him if you have to, until he says, yes, I want to give her the divorce. So the same thing happens about cutting down trees. Not only one who cuts down trees, but also one who smashes household goods, tears clothes, demolishes a building, stops up the spring. All those people who do that kind of wanton waste, such a person is not flogged, but is administered a disciplinary beating imposed by the rabbis. It's like a little bit, but it just lets us know that even in the Middle Ages, the rabbis were thinking about a religious response to wasting resources. Okay, now go to the Benstein because it's more thoughtful than the Rambam.
We can contemplate similar extensions in our own day. For example, Bal Tashchit can be defined as forbidding the wanton destruction of anything of value. Recycling technologies mean that garbage now has value. Therefore, not recycling should be declared a flagrant violation of this biblical injunction. The debate we need to have is what are the limits and what demands for holiness and sustainability make on our lives and lifestyles. The Sefer HaChinuch saw in this mitzvah a very general principle, a midah, a virtue to be cultivated. This is the way of the righteous and those who improve society, that nothing, not even a grain of mustard, should be lost. If possible, they will prevent any destruction that they can. Not so are the wicked who rejoice in the destruction of the world, and they are destroying themselves.
This is so countercultural to the way we live, right? Like, buy new this, buy new that, throw it away. And I think Ben Steen's just reminding us that we can live differently. Anyone have some final thoughts?
Yeah, I have a thought.
Yeah.
I was thinking about my parents and grandparents growing up in the Depression, and they never threw out anything. In
Right.
fact, there was a little bit of a tendency towards the hoarding. I mean, boxes of rubber bands, the newspaper always came with a rubber band. But it's interesting how culturally now we're more sensitive to all of this because the stakes are really higher. So I think it's just great to make the connection with
But
with
what's
the
so
text of
interesting,
our
Eleni,
tradition.
yeah, but Eleni, what's so interesting about what you're saying is we're more culturally sensitive to it, and yet we live in a much more disposable world. I mean, even like I think about disposable plates and disposable, it's easier to use disposable Tupperware or whatever, the plastic stuff, as opposed to stuff that you just keep, which I think a previous generation maybe did better of.
I think
I
you're
would
right,
agree.
but I don't think I think so. There are so many efforts going on. It's hard to generalize and track all of the wonderful things that are happening.
Yeah.
But for sure, it's a great cultural disruption at the very minimum, which is a good thing.
Didn't use
Yeah.
it once.
I want to
Bob Hart.
be disagreeable again. I disagreed with Boober, and now I'll disagree with you and Eleni.
Okay.
It's a
Yeah.
good, I'm putting you in good company now. I don't, the issue isn't, it's the rights of the individual in our society are so overwhelm our responsibility to the community in everything. This is not just, it's everything. No one can tell me what to do. I am the master of my own fate, which is good, but always in balance with the rights of the community. And that balance in the United States is horrific, and it applies to everything, including whether or not I recycle.
I agree with you.
No. okay.
Sorry, I agree. I mean, I agree with you. Yeah. I mean, I think Ben Steen agrees with you, certainly, that, if we were really, as a society, took this seriously in a different way, we'd be able to say, look, we're destroying our earth, and so you must recycle, or you must do X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, I don't feel disagreed with.
Yeah, I don't.
Sorry, Bob.
Sorry. Sorry.
Another aspect to
No,
a
I'm trying
big
to
important
be
discussion.
disagreeable. I do
I
my
know,
best.
but we
Okay, well,
agree
good
with
luck.
you. We agree with you. So, I plan to teach next week and the week after, and then maybe take a break and figure out what we're going to do next. But I plan to teach next week and the week after this. I also want to just say I need help with selling tickets for our David Broza concert. I'd like to pack the house. So if you know people who need to listen to some good music, or just need to be out there in community together in person, please get them to buy tickets. Tomorrow night, Lahavdil Ben Elav Havdalot. Tomorrow night, we as a community do Yom HaShoah together. Anyone can guess why we're doing it tomorrow night and not last night or tonight, which actually are Yom HaShoah? Anyone want to make a good guess? Yeah, Suzanne? Gila
That's
just said
when
it.
Eva was available.
Nope. Gila, you
There.
got it.
Get the kids
Yeah.
there?
To get the kids there.
Ah,
And anyone want to guess why the David Broza concert is on the Wednesday in 2 weeks?
same reason?
Yeah, because we've learned that even if we have a really great program, if it's not on a night that parents are rigila, are I don't know how to say that in English. Rigilala davar. How do you say that? Are accustomed to coming on that night, they're not going to come. So we think learning about Yom HaShoah is so important that we're doing it on a Hebrew school night. And we think that celebrating together as a kehillah, the miracle of Israel's 75, notwithstanding any problems its current government may present to us or any other government, we really want to rock it out and have a great Israel 75th concert. So
Rabbi, maybe you guys can send out you mentioned something on Shabbat about a playlist or ABC did. And there are many people who are not familiar with him. So
Okay.
maybe the next email that goes out can have a couple songs attached or a
I'll
link.
do it for Shabbat. Great.
Or even before Shabbat, because then if it's Shabbat, then people can't buy tickets.
No, but I'll do it like on Friday in my email. Good. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So, thank you. Thank you for taking this time for some Torah. Tomorrow night, we show the film. Oh, let me tell you a few other things. Tomorrow night, we show the film Complicit, and we have a survivor speak to us. We're going to begin with candle lighting and the memorial prayer and Kaddish Yatom. Next Monday night, please come out to the Jewish Center at 6 p.m. Riva and others are doing it is Yom HaZikaron, Israel Memorial Day. The ceremony will be mostly in Hebrew, but that is okay. We want to make the Israelis who lost family feel most comfortable. There'll be some music and memorializing those who were lost both in the defense of the land and state of Israel and in terrorist attacks. That's from 6 to 6:45. Afterwards, we are co-sponsor with the Hindu Jewish Coalition. We have one of the assistant attorney generals of the state of New Jersey coming to speak about the rise in anti-Semitism in New Jersey. So that's all happening before I see you again next Tuesday night. And also Friday night, there is, shul, 6:30. It's rocking. It's fun. I'll get you out by 7:30. And another great bat mitzvah. And you know what? Shul is just so much better when you're there and singing, davening with us. And it's fun. Right, Michelle? It's fun. Yeah. So, and this Shabbat is Rosh Chodesh. So we get to do Hallel. And Avi and I have great Hallel planned. So,
So Sam, you're going to be there? I'm calling you out, man.
okay. And I wish you all a good evening. And if anyone is out on Nassau Street in the next 10 minutes, you'll see me walking a puppy.